All right. A little bit late to the party here, but that's what happens when I don't stream for 3 months or so. I needed to update some stuff on OBS and reconnect my account and stuff. So I should probably tweet that I'm actually live now. Huh. Presumably I am live. It does look like I'm live, but I'll wait for some people to maybe trickle in. Tell me that I've fucked something up horribly before we really get into the discussion of this deck. This is going to primarily be a recap stream of the top four I did of the Sunday challenge, but at the same time, I did kind of want to do maybe a little bit of a brief. I don't know. I don't know if deck tech is the right word, but I don't know. Just give my thoughts about the deck and the notable additions. Fable, the Mirror Breaker, and the License Hearse here. And why I think it kind of changed Moon Stompy's playability in a way. This deck has been like pretty close to dead for a while now. I think there are a lot of easy cards to point to for that to be the case, and I think the new cards are really nice in that regard. But anyway, give it a minute or so. Being informed that I should sign off by plugging Owl House and Amphibia now. I never really had a sign off before. I just went and raided someone, but yeah. What's up, Lawrence? It is certainly live me, if nothing else. I should maybe organize these piles into more discernible. I think this is how I usually sort it. Mana, non-land mana, and then like hate pieces versus just other 3-drops. Something like this. Don't know what Moto does in terms of sideboard sorting here. Why the split cards are in the same pile as the colorless cards. You can see that it goes black cards, red cards, and then Dead Gone plus the Trinisphere, I guess. Moto is an enigma in many ways. Also, I'm sure I'll have to relay this information several times during the stream, but just kind of up top, I will be doing a D&T state of the deck chat with Luinol on Monday. So if any of you want to tune in for that, there'll be more details on time and stuff. I think I'm gonna tweet about it tomorrow or something, but we'll be going live during Memorial Day. Is that what this Monday is? Whatever. One of the days I get off. State of the deck 8 blast. There's only like 5 blasts in the red versions. It's fine. Let me make sure I actually have everything up and running that I usually do, because I literally haven't streamed in 3 months. I looked at my old like Twitch archives and it was like, you did a D&T stream with Luinol in February. Yeesh. I do like streaming from time to time, but just like being like a dedicated like stream 2 to 3 times a week or whatever is just not what my schedule has a capacity for at this rate. I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to like dress up and wear like a suit for the state of the D&T and dress. It'd be really funny, but I don't know if it's worth. I might just like put on a tie over a t-shirt or something. That might be worth. Luna will be on or he'll be in the chat at the time, or he'll be talking with me. I'll just get like stills of like Static and like Akaleth or something to like put behind me. Pretend that they're here. All the D&D minds. But anyway, yeah, I guess we could probably get started with the actual uh, the reason that I wanted to stream today, which was I managed to top 4 the Sunday Legacy Challenge with Red Prison, Moon Stompy, Cars 2, Tokyo Drift. I've been coming up with a lot of stupid meme names lately. I don't think this deck needs to be called Red Prison anymore, regardless of the fact that I think that's the most consistent name for it, because it's just so far gone from a prison strategy. I think Moon Stompy is probably the most accurate name. But I switched it to like Cars 2 and Tokyo Drift just to make unlicensed Hearse jokes. Fast and Furious, Cars. I think Reeple Cheap said Fury Road, which, you know, works because of Fury. I guess Fast and Furious also works because of Fury. Red Prison moves away from control. D&T moves towards control. Curious. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of the new cards did draw like very solid lines in the sand in terms of what your deck's game plan needs to be. Like, decks like Red Prison or Moon Stompy and Death and Taxes, both in kind of almost similar fashions, did kind of toe the line of what they were trying to do. D&T was kind of a weird kind of lock out your opponent aggro deck of like, I'm gonna play these like Thalia's imports and just try to whittle you down before you can really get out of it in a comfortable way. And then Red Prison was also like this weird ensnaring bridge Chandra Karn deck, but also played like Goblin Rabble Masters and stuff. But the printing of a lot of the new cards, I mean, I say a lot of the new cards, but it's basically all of Modern Horizons 2, in addition to like Uro, I guess, did draw some lines in the sand of just like, your stupid Thalia beatdown, or your stupid Goblin Rabble Master beatdown probably isn't good enough. Planeswalker version was so bad for like the past year. Yeah, I remember I played a lot of this deck. I can't remember. I think it was like last year. When did Oko get banned? It was either like right before or right after that. I played like a bunch of Eldrazi and Red Prison back when it was like Basuda Red. Basuda was like a Japanese streamer that played like innovated on a really aggressive version of Moon Stompy with Fireflux Squad, P and Karan Nalar, stuff like that. Yeah, I think it was about a year ago, like in April of 2021 or something. I did play a lot of that deck too, but it did relatively quickly fade away, and I guess we'll touch on that now. I think the big thing that hammered basically all Red Prison strategies was twofold. The deck could just never, ever, 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 ever beat the cards Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, and Murktide Regent. Those cards are just absolutely miserable, and just none of the cards in your deck can ever beat them. Like, if we look at this deck as it's configured right now, we have a bunch of things that can't attack into a 6/6 or race like Uro life gain, or can't attack into an 8/8. You're gonna like double Fury it. You're gonna cast a 8 mana Shatter Skull Smashing to kill a single Murktide Regent. Like, this deck did not have good plans against those cards, and like, you could beat those decks sometimes because you are this, you know, Chalice the Void, Trinisphere, Blood Moon deck. You could like Chalice the Void. Your opponent has like a handful of cantrips, and then you do get the idiot beatdown and stuff. But in general, those cards took over enough of the meta that you didn't have like a consistent game plan against them. And I think specifically Unlicensed Hearse was a huge upgrade for this deck, because it is really good against the cards Murktide Regent and Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath. Do you still do a Stone Fortress Resolving? Yes, absolutely. Even more so now, because I cut all the Bone Crusher Giants. But yeah, Unlicensed Hearse, I think, is the biggest upgrade to this deck. Even if it's not like a mainstay, like maybe this card won't be 3 of main deck forever. I mean, if Murktide gets banned. But Unlicensed Hearse is huge, and I mean, props to Honest. I don't know if anyone was messing. I've seen it in like a couple of like random Delver sideboards as a one of or something, but I know Goblin Lackey had been playing the card a bunch in Goblins with like a couple of Ancient Tombs. He'd been playing Fable the Mirror Breaker too. And then one of the days I was like just looking at his deck list, and I was like, you know, these cards are both really just look really good and just like a moon stompy shell. Can I just like put Unlicensed Hearse and Fable the Mirror Breaker in a deck and like just see what happens? So then I threw together this list. And I don't even remember if I played it. I think I just remember I tweeted it. I might have like 4-1 to League or something. But like it put 2 copies into like the top 8 of like the challenge almost immediately. And I was like, maybe this deck is good. And then I messed around with it more, and like the new editions are really, 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 really good. So anyway, as much as I love Unlicensed Hearse I think is the card that really is holding the deck together in the current meta. Fable the Mirror Breaker, I also probably can't shut up about. This card is, I think, supposed to just be a 4 of in every Red Prison or whatever Red Prison Moon Stompy deck for basically until the end of time. I would probably cut Legion War Bosses from this deck before I cut Fables. After playing with Fable enough, this card is bananas. Like, there were some lists, some Moonstompy lists that were playing, like, Seasoned Pyromancer before, but that card, you can't really cast off Ancient Tomb very well. I think this card is just, like, the stone cold nuts of everything that this deck wants to be doing. It has the perfect mana cost for the deck, which is, a red and 2 mana. You cast it on turn 2 with a Soul Land, or turn 1 with Chrome Mox Soul Land, stuff like that. It does literally every step of the card is something that the deck really wants. You create a threat, it's a 2/2, but it generates mana, which is something this deck always wants. Step 2 is you get to loot away just random bullshit, which this deck really desperately wants. Like, Red Prison, and a lot of the Stompy decks in general always suffered from the issue of like, okay, well, it's turn 7, and my opponent's at like 3 life, and my hand is Chrome Mox, Trinisphere, Blood Moon, or whatever, and just sometimes your hate pieces like just don't scale into the early game. That's kind of the way the deck is designed, is you want to cast these cards on turn 1, turn 2. So Fable the Mirror Breaker really, really helps you in terms of turning your bad cards into good cards, which just Red Prison is full of cards that are very situationally powerful, especially deck cards that fall off in the late game. And then the back half, or I guess Chapter 3, which is also the back half, Neo Sagas are weird. Reflection of Kiki Jiki is just really good with almost all the creatures in your deck. You can copy your Fury, deal 8 damage on a single turn, or just repeatedly wrath your opponent's board every turn. It's obviously insane with Legion War Boss or Rabble Master. You get to double up on triggers and then attack with both of them. And then you don't really have any other creatures other than that. Can't really do anything with Spirit Guide or Magus that's any fun. I did copy a Simian Spirit Guide once in this challenge, I think, but it was mostly because I didn't want to attack. You'd obviously, if you have the extra mana, you'd rather attack a 2/2 that's going to die than attack with the 2/2 that you'd rather not get blocked by a Snapcaster. Something worse than facing turn 1 Fable and you see the opponent discard 2 completely irrelevant lock pieces and slam threats or removal the rest of the game. Yeah, exactly. This deck is so much better, especially against like non-blue, where like decks where your Blood Boons or Trinispheres or Chalices don't line up well. Fable just really gets you out of those binds. All right, hang on, I need to let Lily out. She's freaking out. Traded one pest for another. No dogs in here. It's fine. I think those are the only like big groundbreaking changes in recent history for this deck. Like, I'll touch a little bit, I guess, on like sideboard and mana based considerations. Some Den of the Bugbear is a card that Moon Stompy players did latch onto pretty quickly. I think this card just should be a 4 of though. Some people playing like 2 or 3. This card's just really good, especially when your Blood Moons are bad. This deck is a deck that really wants both mana and threats, and this card is both of them at a pretty easy to work with cost. The comes in tapped downside is almost completely irrelevant with how this deck is currently constructed. All your cards cost 2 or 3 mana, so Den plus any Soul Land, or Den plus any land plus Chrome Mox or Spirit Guide means that like you're casting, it's always casting all of your spells. Yes, your deck is slightly more wastelandable because you have less basic mountains or whatever, but like, let's be real. You're like, who cares? Wasteland Resiliency was not really the reason you're playing this deck. If you want to be Wasteland Resilient, just cast a Blood Moon. So I think Den is really, really good, especially against the influx of Jeskai in the meta right now. Jeskai is a deck where Blood Moon's not very good, and having a mountain that turns into a pretty reasonable threat is really good. And then there's Sokenzen, Crucible of Defiance, which is kind of boring. I'm pretty sure just every monocolored deck in almost every format should just be playing like one of these channel lands at the bare minimum. That's like how there are like one or two Aganjos and D&T lists. You just play one Sokenzen. I've channeled it a lot. This deck, again, loves to have things that produce mana or produce threats when you have enough mana. Because this deck is so filled with conditional cards, it's nice to have a card that has multiple modes like that. Kind of similar to Shatter Skull Smashing. It's a little harder to fit it into something like Goblins. I don't know if the mana, like, if your deck has a ton of basic mountains, or maybe even like 2 or 3, one of them is maybe better with the Sokenzen. The math does get a little bit more muddled when you're on like a 2-color deck with fetch lands and stuff. But like, I do think the channel lands are really, really good. For like monocolored decks, especially, just get to like free roll one of these really easily. Once you get into like once you're putting fetches in your deck, it becomes a little bit harder to support them. And then the sideboard is really boring red prison stuff. Oops, I accidentally just cut a dead gun. There's honestly not a lot interesting to say about the sideboard. Dead Gone, I think, is one of your better cards. I have completely cut Bone Crusher Giant from this deck. People used to play some in the main. I think 2 damage is just kind of terrible right now. There's a world where you do want to fit Bone Crushers back in, if there's like a lot of Stone Forges or the Mirror happening. Conveniently, everything in this deck has 2 toughness. You can kill... Stone Forge is a card that I mentioned earlier, you just basically can never, ever, ever beat. But I think in general, as like a main deck option, having a 2-mana shock is just like really, really medium. And this deck is just playing a bunch of cards that are, in general, better than a Bone Crusher Giant would be. And then sideboard, you have a shock that has the added benefit of bouncing Murktide Regent if you needed to, or Mirror Age. So I think this is like the best like removal option currently in the sideboard. Nothing else exciting. Quick talk about how Torpor Orb sucks, no one should play it. I think, well, as much as I want to talk shit about Torpor Orb, I need to talk a little bit of shit about Sulphur Elemental first. People keep, like, putting in Sulphur Elemental and being like, alright, I'm just gonna beat the D&T matchup with my Sulphur Elemental. Like, X1 hate has been, decent at best against D&T for, like, the past year at least. Stop putting, like, you need 2, we just finished talking about how Stoneforge Mystic just crushes this deck into the dirt, and just like, I'll just put my +1/-1 thing into play and beat the Stoneforge Mystic deck. It'll be fine. Just like, you don't give a shit about their Thalias and Spirit of the Labyrinth. It's like, yeah, it's good against Mom and like Flicker Wisp, but like Stoneforge is the card you care about, which is why if you want to beat D&T, you should actually play Torpor Orb. There was a single Torpor Orb in this deck initially when I like first constructed it as a nod to to Death and Taxes. I ended up cutting it because I just haven't seen Death and Taxes a lot. But I guess that's my mini Sulphur Elemental rant. But yeah, don't play Torpor either, because I don't want to lose to this deck when I play D&T. Anyway, I think that's mostly it in terms of actually talking about anything that's like remotely interesting in terms of innovations on the deck. The extra 3 ball on the sideboard just because some specific matchups are really good. Not really, it's just kind of a combo hate card. Like, if you look at, like, there's only really 4 chalices, 2 3 balls, as, like, if you're playing against, like, Storm or something. So it's nice to have just an added density of stuff versus, like, Storm or Doomsday or whatever. You do get to bring in, like, ley lines and stuff for Storm or Rebs versus Doomsday. And, like, Blood Moons are still good. Decent hate cards in those matchups, but Trinisphere is just, like, a good combo hate card. You don't really need the third one. It's definitely one of the more replaceable cards. I think I did have just the 2 Trinispheres in some iterations. It's probably similar to, like, I'm playing the 7th Blood Moon right now, as well as, like, the 7th kind of anti-combo artifact sort of thing. Both of these cards you could play, like, if you're in a meta that needs, like, a lot of Blood Moons, you could play, like, the 4th Magus. Likewise, if you have a meta that's a lot of, like, Ant and stuff, you could play the 4th Trinisphere, stuff like that. Please stop. Anyway, let's go over the matches. Is this full screened enough? Yeah, that looks like it actually lined up well. She's the best. She's not the best. She's a menace. She hasn't got to do this for so long. Actually, that's not true, because I was actually sitting here during Pro Tour testing last week. I was at my computer a lot, and she just loves to sit here and be annoying. I'd like kick her out at the start of every match, like while I was playing in the PT. I was like, I'm not about to have to deal with this cat on top of Arena's interface. Anyway, let's get into the real games. So match 1. So bear with me because I'm going to have to remember some of these events. It was 4 days ago at this point. Wednesday, Tuesday, yeah, 4 days ago or something. Also, Red Prison makes a lot of very amusing and not very interesting to comment on games, as it turns out. So some of these games will just be me going, well, I cast my spell and then they died. And a lot of mulligan decisions will be like, well, this hand has lands and spells, and like you cast your lock piece and they die. Genuinely, though, this hand is like a little bit dicey. I'm not sure if this is a keep, because it notably has no red source. But you do have like 3 really powerful cards that you can cast: Chalice, Hearse, Fury. So I think I did end up keeping this. Notably, also, you have Magus, so, like, even if you find Simian Spirit Guide as your red source... Alright, time to go. If you find Simian Spirit Guide as your red source, Magus can color fix you in its weird way. Oh, God. Okay, there we go. VLC's okay. Alright, we draw bad cards. You got 2 spells to cast. Yeah, exactly. This deck also has a lot of red sources. If we go back to the actual mana base, it's got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. Like, we have 21 draws at red mana here. And we're on the draw, so I think this hand's, like, fairly reasonable. It's hard to pass up turn 1 Chalice with, like, more castable spells. Force, Pitch Bonder. Opponent has a bunch of lands, so I think it's just got to be control at this point. And we draw the Spirit Guide. So yeah, it's a little awkward that my opponent went like fetch land, hasn't done anything. This makes this Magus really bad. But notably, we also drew Blood Moon, which gets to color fix us. So my opponent will fetch their 2 basics, but we do get to get our red mana. Now we just need, like, any land, which we counted, like, what, 21 sources? So add on another, like, 6 lands now that we can draw. So it's, like, 27 top decks at, like, casting our spells. Notably, as much as I hate... maybe hate's a strong word, but... as much as I dislike Blood Moon in the Jeskai matchup, Blood Moon does do some work, even if your opponent gets, like, basic island, basic plains. It is almost like I described it as, like, similar to a Trinisphere effect, in terms of your opponent doesn't really get to, like, cast a lot of spells in the same turn. It does lock them out of, like, casting multiple white spells, or casting multiple cantrips, or whatever. Not saying it's good. I do cut them all post-board, because I think Trinisphere is usually better in that role, but I think even... if your opponent has a couple of basics in play as the Jeskai deck, Blood Moon does do a decent amount of work. Also notably here, I have to cast Magus instead of the Goblin Rabble Master, because it's, like, pretty clear. Jeez, VLC does not like screen recordings of Moto. It's just almost never correct to cast your Goblin Rabble Master into your opponent's open white mana. Yeah, I can cut them off of Verdict and Wandering Emperor as well. I think Wandering Emperor is double white. But yeah, we get to sit here with our Hearse in play, which is, like, not the best against Jeskai. They do play a couple of Snapcaster Mages. But Hearse does get to sit here and accumulate cards, and then just does get to punch them in the face at some point. We missed on our red source. Sad, because our opponent, like, kept on their Ponder, but then also didn't hit their land drop. So I think they probably just have, like, a handful of plows or whatever. They found their land. So, like, presuming that we find a red source, which we do, definitely casting Fable here, obviously. Fable gets Force of Willed, unfortunately. But our opponent has cast, like, what, 2 different Force of Wills here and hasn't really gotten any card advantage. So we're sitting okay. And we have this Hearse in place, so at some point we do just get to chunk the opponent in the face. They exile a Pyroblast with their Expressive Iteration, the best feeling in the world. So yeah, this is when, yeah, you kind of just have to cast the Rabble Master here. But almost assuredly dead. But now we also get to just hit them for 8. And that means if we draw like any other 2-power creature, we just get to kill them over 2 turns with this Hearse. Iteration says this is the Mentor version, right? You might know better than me. I don't draw any conclusions from seeing Iteration, but I guess that makes sense. A prismatic ending my guy, which is sad. Also, notably, one of the reasons I don't like Blood Moon over Trinisphere here is because, like I was talking about earlier, Den of the Bugbear, one of your best cards in this matchup, specifically, and Blood Moon locks you out of doing anything with these. One of the many reasons that I usually just keep in the 3 balls over the Blood Moons. Can you create instant speed? Yeah. We crewed in response to the Swords to Plowshares. More iterations. Opponent plays more mountains. Yeah, that makes sense. You can't really play like the 400 3-drop version with Expressive Iteration as well. We draw Fury, which does kind of punch them in the face. I really like Fury. I think it was a huge upgrade for the Moon Stompy shells, but didn't really get to see a lot of play in them because post MH2 Red Prison was just bad. But I think this card was just like a huge upgrade for that deck. Being like just very castable in your Soul Land mono red deck and just being a huge threat that also gets to like kill a bunch of your opponent's shit. I opted to not cast the Shatter Skull Smashing here. I imagine it will at some point target the Snapcaster, but I figure there's a decent chance my opponent will play like a Narset or a Teferi or something first, and this card does get to target 2 things, so it might as well get like the cleaner kill. It's not like we're choked on mana either. Any interest in Layla or the token generating beat sticks, just that more widely useful? I saw some Red Prison players playing Layla. The card seems kind of bad, though. I don't really know why people were playing it to begin with. I mean, it's really hard to pass up cards that cost 2 and a red in this deck, but, like, I don't know. The card just didn't seem that interesting to me. Draw Fable, which is great, and opponent casts Force Negation. Also, notably, Blood Moon doing a lot of work here. Again, my opponent has 2 basics in play, can't hard cast this Force of Negation, has to pitch a dress down for it. We draw another Fable. I guess another reason to not cast the Shatter Skull Smashing is that we might end up looting it away instead at some point. So yeah, here's Fable coming in clutch. Remember when I was like, yeah, your opponent's at like 3 life and your hand is just like fucking Trinisphere, Blood Moon, whatever, and now we instead have Fable of the Mirror Breaker and we get to turn our hand into real cards. Yeah, easy discardable like loot here for anything. So Kenzin, also coming into play here. Opponent's at 2 life. This thing makes 2 1/1s with haste. We can't do it this turn because I'd rather kill the Snapcasters than like make than force them to block, right? I could soak Hens in, attack them down to 1, and then like trade the Snapcast right now, but I think I'd rather clear off both of them. This is uncounterable, so it's not like I'm in any hurry to cast it. And we get to channel soak Hens in and kill them. And they die. We did it. I'm glad this was my first round because it actually has some interesting gameplay to it. The control matchups generally do. Whereas some of the later rounds you'll see are kind of dog shit. As is the gameplay with Red Prison sometimes. Again, Hands Gas. Big fan of lands plus spells in my Red Prison deck. We just get to, like, pitch this Fury. Not the greatest draw, but notably, again, this deck has so many situationally good and powerful cards, accelerants that let me, like, cast my powerful spells early. And then sometimes you draw too many of them, or, like, cards that are dead, and just, like, what am I supposed to do with these? And then you have Fable the Mirror Breaker to turn them into real cards again. We get to Chrome Mox, pitch Fury, play my land, cast Hearse. Get the Hearse going. Opponent doesn't want to give me things to Hearse with. For some sort of action, at least. Fables are great. Getting your Fable the Mirror Breaker Force of Will just feels real nice. Narset finds Brainstorm. We draw a Reb. So we have an interesting choice here. Something in the at the time I was thinking about. But given that Lackey was talking about this deck probably isn't playing like Days Undoing, I guess it makes a lot more sense to end up on my line anyway. But I was like, I could like just end up blasting this, or like hold up. I guess we're already holding up Blast. That was part of my plan, was we get to hold up Blast with. Whoops, come back. There we go. We get to hold up the Secret Blast, Force of Will with Simian Spirit Guide, as it were. But this is ended up just being a great line. We get to knock the second activation off the Narset. We get to hold up Red Element to Blast anyway. If they do happen to have Days Undoing in their deck, we are not just cold to it here. Sick that in the matchup where Hearse Mediocre smacked them for 8. Makes the Snap Source Fall and traded with a pending. Yeah, Hearse is really, really, really nice. I like I ranted about on Twitter, love cards that are incidental, graveyard hate, that aren't just like totally unplayable in main decks. Hearse is just a really good beater, interacts very profitably with just a lot of the things that the Red Person deck is doing. The entire deck is just like 2 power creatures to crew it. Red Person can tend to sit here for a little bit, and you can make your 8/8 and hit them with it like we did last game. Opponent ends up tapping their mana, doing nothing. Unfortunately, we can't loot this Chrome Mox way like I wanted to, because there's a Narset. Something I did once and remembered to never do again. Those from the Saturday challenge was only playing 2 dens and 19 lands. I think it's like kind of insane to just cut 2 lands and then also go up the curve, which that deck did. This deck does have a lot of mana, but I think it's kind of irresponsible to do something like that. Also, cutting dens, like I said before, is kind of ludicrous. Den's really good in this deck. I'd rather just play. If I had to cut 2 lands from this deck, I would just play 2 mountains instead of 4. Kind of expected to get, like, Wandering Emperor or something here, but just nothing happened. I guess Wandering Emperor is, like, pretty bad here anyway, but... Yeah, at this point, I'm just exchanging Reb with basically any, like, decent card. Given that Mox is literally a dead card here, is it crazy to trade, to blast Narset in response to the Fable trigger? Kind of like trading the Reb for a reasonable card in that case, right? They're like trading the Reb for a redraw at that point. I don't think I'm interested in that. If that were the case would have... It's an interesting thing to think about. It does give you a redraw the Chrome Mox at the cost of the blast, which is like still decent. So I don't think I want to, but it is definitely something I didn't really consider in the moment. I think I'm happier to exchange the Reb with something else and just sit here on my like my bounty of things going on versus my opponent's nothing going on. I think I'm happy to stay in a holding pattern and end up like firing off a Reb on a brainstorm or something. That's fair. I also kind of didn't expect the Narset to die to the token. But the Narset was also at 1 at that point. Like we had hit it down to 1 the previous turn. Opponent spinning their wheels. Find a Swords of Plowshares, plow the token. We still have infinite things to do. Hearse going up. I think this is time for Den of the Bugbear, yeah. Time to get our beatdowns on for sure. They let me attack, so I don't think they have second plow, but then they ended up plowing the Hearse over the Den, which I was very surprised by. I get this probably just implies that they have Snapcaster in hand and they want to trade with both. Learned recently you could double activate Den to get a second token. Yeah, that sounds right. I haven't read the text on the card thoroughly enough, but it sounds like if it's worded the same way as Raging Ravine, it gains the triggered ability twice. So that would make sense. Get to fire up the Den again here. At some point, I think this was just Moto replays stuttering or something. Of note, don't copy your animated Den of the Bugbear with your Reflections of Kiki-Jiki. It will just create a land that will die at the end step. Yeah, this is kind of what I assumed was coming. So then I end up using the Den of the Bugbear, tap it for mana to... This is when I copy the Simian Spirit Guide, because I'd rather not trade my real 2/2 for the Snapcaster Mage. I'll offer the trade with the 1/1, and I'll offer the trade with, obviously, the thing that's going to die in a turn. But at this stage of the game, because if they decide not to block, because they want to like prevent the 2/2s from attacking or something, next turn I'm casting Fury and cleaning up the Snapcaster Mage, then I can do attack all. I end up trading with the 1/1 token. I thought it was like a little weird, but I'll take it. And instead we just have Fury, which is nuts. You get to Fury this Monastery Mentor. If the last 2 cards aren't Force plus blue card, they're just like super, super dead. Moto Replays has to figure out what the line here is. Maybe? Come on. You can do it, Moto. I believe in you. And we cast Fury and they concede and die. We did it! Hey, Army, how's it going? Really enjoy that VLC just makes you resize the window every single game. So this is where we get to see... So the previous match was really kind of a showcase of a lot of the deck's grinding power and like a lot of like the branching decision trees and stuff. And this match is a showcase of being a luck-sacking piece of shit. Oh, we won the die roll. Oh, we have a turn 1 Trinisphere. Oh, my opponent also mulliganed to 5. Oh, cast this Trinisphere. Interesting. My opponent has a Wasteland. Wasteland and City Traders. Ooh. We have a Blood Moon. And then they concede. Fun and interesting gameplay for all. So at this point, I may have took some liberties on assuming the deck that they were playing didn't really register a certain deck when I was thinking about decks that would mold a 5, wasteland me, and die there. So I took the liberty of showing you all my glorious sideboard plan, which was board out all of the Blood Moons. I'm like, oh, if they're like on like, you know, Delver or something, this hand's like pretty good. If they're on like D&T or something, if they're on 60 card D&T for some reason, we just thought we got a turn 1 Rabble Master. It's fine. My opponent goes fetch, forest, mana bond. I'm like, maybe we've made a mistake here. Notably, I think especially after drawing the Shatter Skull Smashing, I also fuck up here. I think I'm just supposed to Chalice on 2, right? Against your opponent going turn 1 Mana Bond, you're like, alright, the things I want to beat are like the turn 2 Winding Way / Mulch. So just Tomb, Chrome Mox, Pitch Smashing, Spirit Guide, Chalice on 2, and just like Rabble Master the following turn. But I didn't do that because I didn't really reorient myself. I just cast my Goblin Rabble Master instead. Gotta get my beatdowns on. They've turn 2 revealed their hand of the entire Dark Depths combo. Interesting. Luckily, I don't know, maybe they kept the Force of Vigor in the opener, or I like to think that they drew the Force of Vigor for turn. Now, if they drew the Force of Vigor for turn, they would have just turned 1 Depths me. So I don't know, I guess they drew the second half of the Depths combo for turn? Hey, Runcore, thanks for the raid, appreciate it. So yeah, my opponent has made turn 2 Merit Lage, and I boarded out all my Blood Moons, so I didn't have anything to do about this. But if you recall, when I showed everyone my sideboard, the cards that I did board in expected them to be something like, I don't know, D&T or Delver. I boarded in all my Dead Gons. So let's watch as they make a turn 2 Merit Lage in my upkeep. And then I draw Dead Gone, like a really fucking good Magic player. I'm so good at Magic, chat. It is unbelievable how good at Magic the Gathering I am. And then they die. We also just get to put this Chalice on 2 for good measure, in case they draw it, like Winding Way or whatever, Mulch. Like I said, match 1, really good showcase of like this deck's, you know, like grinding prowess and ability to just like have complex decision trees with the best of them. Match 2, very much a showcase in being a luck sacking piece of shit. You gotta get out of here, kid. Get lost. Match 3, also a good match of me being a luck-sacking piece of shit in a completely different way. My opponent chooses to reveal Yorion. I win the die roll, I get to play my Chalice. Pitch the Blood Moon, assuming that this is like D&T or something. I'll just cast a Chalice for like Vial Plow, cast my turn 2 Fable, loot away this Chrome Mox, stuff like that. They play a Bloodstained Mire, so I don't know what the fuck's going on over there. Their Yorion Bloodstained Mire deck. I'm just gonna cast my Fable. And then my opponent disconnected for the next 15 minutes, and then I won the match. And that's the end of round 3. This is, in fact, the Yorion Bloodstained Mire DC person, yes. The world may never know what they were playing. Bloodstained Mire, Yorion are the only 2 cards in the entire deck that I saw. We'll never know. We had a real good start. We have, like, turn 3, animate this Den of the Bugbear, like, loot away this Chrome Mox, draw real cards, start attacking. but really don't know what was going on with Bloodstained Mire Yorion. They were 2-0 too, so like I don't know. They dropped after this, so I guess their internet just was not cooperating. Fun times for sure. Alright, get out of here. Bet you were on Goblins, but they weren't playing 81 cards. But Euron Goblins is like probably the most reasonable actual guess. All right, and then we start getting into the rounds where I know or at least can assume what people are on. Poker's Wizard, notable Ant player. Honestly, not positive I should have kept this hand. I was okay with it being on the play and a turn 1 Moon. Yes, Gaz Nerd Warrior was my opponent last round. So like Blood Moon not that great against Ant, but like on the play turn 1, and specifically also the Blood Moon that does pressure them, I think this hand was more of a keep than no. They do only have like 2 basics generally. It was Yorion Goblins? Oh, that's hilarious. Incredible. But anyway, the deck does have like a lot of powerful tools against Ant. Obviously, any hand with like Chalice of the Void or Transfer is going to be a better match. But I don't like mulliganing against the Thoughtseize deck. I like having a turn 1 like pretty good play against a lot of their hands. Their deck's light on basics. We get to play a 2/2, and then next turn we get to like cast another Grey Ogre and hope that's good enough if they're like locked out of mana for a little bit. It's possible I should have mulled this though. This is definitely one of the hands I was less sure on the day. But regardless, Pitch Shatter, Skull Smashing, Ancient Tomb, Magus, Blood Moon you. And then, of course, my opponent goes basic Swamp Thoughtseize. Such is your fate when you register Blood Moon in your deck. Your opponent with 2 basics will always have their basics in their opener. We go on our Grey Ogre beatdown plan. And then they also instantly have Basic Island. Just the most tilting possible. Hey, but we drew another Grey Ogre. Don't worry. We have a plan. This is payback for round 2. yeah, that is accurate. It's okay, we drew a good card now. We get to cast Chalice, which I think 2 is the most correct number at this stage in the game. I wasn't positive, but I ended up firing out Chalice on 2. I think 2 is the best at hitting their payoffs, right? Because it turns off all their Infernal Tutors and Burning Wishes if they're on that. Like, obviously, Chalice on 0 or 1 can be better, usually because it's more accessible than Chalice on 2 in the early game. But I think if you're at this stage in the game, 2 is most likely to hit their action spells, yeah. And we beat them down more. And they cast a Ponder. And we beat them down more. Such is the life of a Moon Stompy player. And then they concede. We did it. Classic Moon Stompy fashion. I think if returned to Magic was going to drop Graveyard Dex thingy of D&T or Mono Green Post. What you think? I think... Obviously, asking the Death and Taxes player if you should play Death and Taxes or non-Death and Taxes. I'm more inclined to say one than the other. But I think in terms of competitive viability, I do just think Death and Taxes is going to be the more reasonable deck long-term. Post has never really been like a big like linchpin of the meta. Like, obviously, there are like Post is a reasonable deck, especially like nowadays. Into Play has done a lot of... has played the deck basically forever. There's a lot of innovation on the archetype. It's definitely like more powerful than the deck has been in the past. But I think in terms of like general consistency and long-term playability, I think Death and Taxes is just gonna usually be the better choice. Also, you don't have to buy a Tabernacle, so I have to imagine the Death of Taxes is cheaper just based on that. I don't actually know which deck is cheaper, because Post probably is a lot of, like, dollar bin garbage plus a Tabernacle, huh? Although D&T is, like, a bunch of dollar bin garbage plus, like, Stoneforge package and, like, Solitudes, so... Does Post still play Candelabra? Nah. Alright. And then match 2. I guess maybe we'll analyze this hand. This hand, I think, is just bad. It's like turn 2, Chalice on 1, and like some threats, but this hand desperately needed some acceleration, which you really need to keep up with the combo decks. Yeah, if you own 60 card D&T already, it's like really easy to build 80 card. You just need Solitudes. You don't need Sagas in the short term either. You could pretty easily play the Sagaless lists. But anyway, I think this hand's bad. I think this hand is like also kind of bad, but you know, beggars can't be choosers on your 6 card hands. I'm trying to figure it. Like, we have turn 1 Chalice into turn 2. Like, Fable is good at making, like, cutting some of the chaff out of this hand for good cards, so is reasonable. Also, notably, if we get Thoughtseize, we can just turn 1 Chrome Mox Smashing Tomb Fable. And we get turn 1 Thoughtseized, as is expected. Yeah, also, if you want to tune in on Monday's stream specifically, I'm going to be doing a D&T state of the deck address with Lunel, where we're going to talk about a lot of the different variations of D&T right now. If you want to get kind of like an introductory crash course. But yeah, feel free to DM me on Twitter. Opponent casting all their cantrips. We luckily get to turn our bad cards into good cards, because Fable's a good magic card. I think I discard Den plus Spirit here. There's like, you could think about keeping the Den, because it's like, oh, like we basically have the mana to activate Den. But at this stage in the game, we don't really care about producing the threat. We want to find like more Trinispheres, or even like Blood Moons are decent right now. We want to just find more lock pieces. So I think discarding both Spirit Guide and Den here is fine. We can cast all of our spells off of 3 mana already. So we're pretty happy to just ship everything. Yep. And then we draw into Chalice, which is great. And we get a Chalice on 2 again here, which notably, I think it's just better than Chalice on 1 or Chalice on 0 if you can afford to. We also get to sneakily hold up Red Blast if we want, but I'd probably rather just cast the Spirit Guide as a 2/2 since we're lacking in clock. But I don't know if I would have rebbed anything here. I might have rebbed like a Brainstorm. Reb in hand is also a reason to not play the Chalice on 1, notably. But I've probably beaten that horse to death enough. We get to attack, make our treasure, so we get to continue holding up Reb and cast our Grizzly Bear still. I do love a good idiot beatdown. I'm a big fan of just like a real motley crew of loser creatures that are just beating your opponent to death. I think almost all of my favorite decks involve this as like a plan A or B. Hold Rep for Chain of Vapor, probably? Yeah, that makes sense. Hold Rep for a bounce spell. I do end up not doing that and instantly repping this Brainstorm. I just like repping Brainstorm because Brainstorm's a really fucking good card and I like not letting my opponents resolve it. But it's possible it was wrong there. I don't know. But it's like they could find Abrupt Decay instead, but they're not always on the green splash anymore. Maybe Did I know my opponent's list? Let me look up Poker's Wizard real quick on Goldfish and see if they were. Goldfish. Player. Poker's Wizard. I think they play enough that I would know almost. They're 75. Yeah, no red splash, meaning that they're only out to this Chalice on 2 is 2 Chain of Vapors and like a Meltdown if they brought it in, but they probably didn't bring it in because it's probably a Burning Wish target. So yeah, I think you're probably right that I shouldn't have Reb to that Brainstorm, and I should just hold Reb for Chain of Vapor specifically, because they are hard-pressed to get out of this. They need like a natural Past in Flames into natural Tendrils or something, right? They're getting to the life total stage where they can't Ad Nauseam. So turning off all their Burning Wishes and Infernal Turn. Yeah. This is probably incorrect. It's just so hard to resist Revving Brainstorms, you know? And we draw another Reb, so it's all fine. Don't worry. We just cast that Reb because we knew there was another one coming. Not a big reason to copy anything here. I could, like, copy the Shaman and make an extra treasure, but, like, we have 8,000 mana. Obviously, we don't want to take 2 damage off the Tomb because it puts us into range of, like, getting naturally Tendrils easier. They Wish for Consign too, though. I mean, both those cards, both Wish and Consign cost 2 mana, so I don't think they'll be doing either of those. Oh, in terms of if they boarded in Meltdown, maybe. Don't know which you would board in. Consign, obviously, I think stays in the sideboard forever, but I imagine... Meltdown probably gets boarded in sometimes, but I don't know if it would get boarded in here. I'm not knowledgeable enough in Ant to do that. And then here I go aggressively reffing cantrips when I definitely should have just held it for Chain of Vapor. Oh, was the D&T list? Oh, do I have like a D&T list on Stream Decker right now? It's probably from like February then. And my opponent just doesn't have anything in dice. We did it! Does it have Makara in it, really? Wow. When did I stream with Mangara? That was like during like an Honorog thing. I made a promise to someone that I would register a Mangara. And like that's how that ended up happening, but that was a long time ago. I think it was like an Honorog event or something. Skynoodle D&T 6.0. This does have a Magara of Corondor in it. Nice. Good for me. Don't play this list. Anyway, round 5. My opponent... So yeah, this is the stage of the challenge where you can start knowing a lot of what your opponents are on, based on MTG Goldfish and stuff. But I actually didn't 100% know what this person was on. Didakith. Yeah, the results were like a bunch of green, like depths and cloud post. They had a 5-0 result with that weird, it wasn't even like the mono black depths deck. It was just like a mono black deck. Like a lot of depths and posts. So interested in Blood Moon hands specifically. While this hand is technically a Blood Moon hand, it's like a turn 3 Blood Moon hand, turn 2 Chalice, turn 3 Blood Moon on the draw. Not exactly what you want to be doing against decks trying to make Merit Lage. This hand is like maybe keepable if my opponent was specifically on Cloud Post. Like if I was against Into Play specifically, I might have kept this hand, but like against an opponent who has mostly depths results and like a little bit of Cloud Post results, I think this hand's look pretty bad. And then we mulligan into a much much less interesting hand. I think this hand is worse than the 6, but I opt to not want to go to 5. This deck isn't excited to mulligan a lot, especially on the draw. I'm not going to tell everyone to buy Plateau on Monday. You'll have to watch Monday to find out. We end up basically with the same start as our 7-card hand by drawing 3rd land and Chalice of just like turn 2 Chalice, turn 3 Blood Moon. And then surprised my opponent isn't on Depths. They just like fire off a bunch of Brainstorms. They're just on like Bant. Which I guess this hand is pretty good against. More excited that they fetch double duel. They might be on like the 4-color with like no duels, and this Blood Moon is just really good. I opt to cast Rabble Master over Blood Moon here because at this point I am presuming that they're on like a 4-color deck or something, or even like Bant. So I'm more interested in putting in threats and trying to pressure Force of Wills. They still have 6 cards and they just brainstormed twice. So like I think Blood Moon is like completely lights out for the 4-color deck a lot of the time. So I'm more interested in conserving that and forcing my opponent to like have to react to this other stuff first. They fetch a basic Forest, which means they're probably more likely on Bant. Also, 3 Windswept Heaths is a lot, which is like a little bit suspicious. They cast Life from... Oh, no, they cast Life from Moment's turn. They ending my Chalice. And then they have a Plow for my Rabble Master. And then... Okay, stream. And then we have to just continue to beat them down. Oh, God. Moto's skipping around everywhere. I have to continue beating them down over resolving a Chalice. It's a little bit... obviously, it's a little bit more awkward on the mana base to... Or the mana curve, I guess, to cast the Chalice here. And, like, cannot continue to apply pressure. I like getting Rival Masters down while my Source of Pleasures opponents don't have white mana accessible. Just to, like, get the little idiots beating down. And obviously, now that my opponent has fetched basic Forest and basic Plains, my Blood Moon window is kind of gone. Would Layla be reasonable over Fable for the Hearse synergy? I think Fable is one of the best cards in this deck. I think Layla... I haven't actually tested Layla, but I talked about this at the beginning of the stream a little bit. I don't really understand why Layla's good. Like, people were putting Layla into these mono red decks, but people put a lot of questionable 2 and a red cards in this deck, and just like, I'm not super keen on Layla as a card. I don't think a synergy with Hearse is enough to like make me more interested in it. Then suddenly my opponent has Thespian Stage. I'm like, oh no, this is Depths after all. Yes, this is Perspelistic Blue Depths list. Yeah, they were on Bant, as it turns out. So now but they don't have Plow, so life's great. And now we just get to cast Blood Moon to prevent us from dying to a 20/20 randomly. Even if they have like Crop Rotation, they don't have enough mana here to make it 20/20 that turn. So I'm happy to just Blood Moon to lock that out, and then they die. Oh no. VLC, come back. Hand's great. Notably, now that my opponent's on Bant Depths, I like having turn 1 Blood Moon a lot more. Oh, I don't have that little follows thing open. Thank you, Runcore, for the follow. Appreciate it. I don't have Streamlabs, I think was it. Man, haven't streamed in so long. Don't have all my programs open. Where's the Yokel Hops? I don't actually know how to pronounce that. Never had to say the word aloud because the card's not good. But no, the card's not very competitively viable, unfortunately, as sweet as the card is. So my opponent has a single basic, so I'm happy to cast turn 1 Blood Moon here. It is a little bit scary, obviously, putting your Blood Moon into play versus Depths. And they have the second basic, which is also unfortunate. Because if they play their Dark Depths and then get to like Besage you or Force of Vigor your Blood Moon or whatever, then you're kind of shit out of luck. But I think getting getting this Blood Moon down earlier rather than later is just kind of where we need to be. It's possible I should have just cast Fable this turn. I do really like the 6-mana Chandra. Yeah, I think 6-mana Chandra is good. I have one in the sideboard. I think it's really good against Jeskai specifically. But yeah, I like the way that the current deck is built in terms of it's very lean and very good at casting exactly. It's like it's 3-drop mana curve and doesn't need like additional lands to like cast like weird top end stuff, except out of the sideboard. Split between playing 8 cast and mono red. What's the difference? The decks are very, very, very different. Oh, I played the Hearse because the Loam. Duh. That's why I opted to not play the Fable here. Just want to get the Loam out of the way. Alright, so here's a turn that... I won't call it a mistake, but it's definitely a bummer. I don't think there's ever a world where you just pass the turn holding up dead gone. I think you just have to, like, get something going here. Just, like, casting the Fable here is so easy. What are the odds my opponent has exactly Crop Rotation plus Force of Vigor? Like, they only have the 1 green, so it can't be, like, Crop Rotation plus, like, Boseiju or something, or, like, a different Naturalize on the Blood Moon. They need exactly Crop Rotation plus free way to kill your Blood Moon. And then my opponent casts Crop Rotation, gets Dark Depths, and then Force of Vigor is my Blood Moon. A real bummer, for sure. And then we die. I'm, like, 99% sure that you're supposed to cast a spell there, but sometimes you die to stuff like that, and it's sad. Hand's not thrilling, but good. Again, putting a lot of weight on having turn 2 Blood Moon here. Against the 3-color Dark Depths deck. Do have to be wary, especially after we've seen Force of Vigor, though, not to just get Crop Rotation, Force of Vigor, or whatever. One of the reasons that I definitely don't cast the Blood Moon right here, if they have Crop Rotation, Force of Vigor again, we just instantly die. I'm more keen on establishing pressure at this stage and trying to use Blood Moon to maybe, like, hiccup them for a turn to prevent a Merit Lage on, like, turn 3 or something. They're not that good at, like, turboing one out, so we don't need to play this Blood Moon immediately to, like, lock them. They don't have a white mana here, so casting Rabble Master here is great to at least get some initial pressure going. I think this is a spot where it's very, very enticing to cast your turn 2 Blood Moon, but my opponent kept a 7-card hand where they go Trop Go for a reason, and I don't want to fall for, like, Blood Moon bait. They fetch, and they just cast Collector Oof, which is just not very good here. I'm thinking I'm going to Mountain Shatter Skull it for 2, but then we just draw Fury. So I'm much more interested in, again, oh god, VLC, help. Casting my free spell, so I get to continue to pressure my opponent to death. My opponent, if they even have Wraths in their deck, which is not likely, they're very far away from casting them. So, again, regardless of not having a bunch of, like, 2 non-basics in play versus my Blood Moon, it's a little bit more interesting because they're tapped out, but I'm just not interested in getting, like, play Dark Depths for turn, cast Force of Vigor, kill you. I'm much more interested in just killing my opponent with these creatures in play, because I'm not positive they can even beat me having 2 Rabble Masters here. And then they just draw their card and then concede because they can't beat the 2 Rabble Masters here. I think this was a a good lesson in like balancing Blood Moon versus your Dark Depths opponents. And for those of you keeping score, we are 5-0 in this challenge currently, which means we're like basically locked for top 8. We would have to like lose both of our next rounds and then also have some terrible breaker. Why Rabble post combat? I didn't Rabble post combat. That was pre-combat. The weird VLC plus like Moto lag might have not shown it very well, but we got our extra. We have like 3 tokens in play. So this hand's great. I think my opponent was almost assuredly on Delver. We get to play Chalice, play Blood Moon. Be pretty happy with that. And then my opponent Force of Wills my Chalice, and then plays Dragon's Rage Channeler, and then dazes my Blood Moon, and just some good old-fashioned getting Delvered. Opt to Shatter Skull this Dragon's Rage Channeler instead of like casting Goblin Rabblemaster. This is a lesson that I think is like very level 0 Red Prison, kind of Red Prison 101 is just you really don't cast your Rabblemaster into open mana if you have other things you can be doing. What's your next D&T stream? Monday. And also against Delver, I'm very happy to just kind of get their clock off the table. We're taking a lot of damage off our Ancient Tomb here. We've tapped it 3 times now. Happy to just kill this while I have a chance. They only have land plus instant. This also we get to play around days, just casting this for 1. The Rabblemaster could also be played around days, but you know. They fetch their basic, probably worried about possible second Blood Moon. We get Wasteland, which is just very, very good for us. These dens starting to maybe look a little bit awkward with how they like fit into the mana base on these turns, but like given that we are playing around days most of these turns anyway, I don't think these dens would have entered play even as mountains on any of these turns. And then, you know, Force Pitch Days, like just always respect. They always have 2 days. And here's where I'm just like, they're just going to play their land and then Murktide me and we die. But they don't Murktide me, they just Delver me, which is much more beatable. Okay, this is the first turn that the Den's probably much worse than the Mountain here, where we have to play it tapped and then take another 2 off the Ancient Tomb. But notably also, the Den here is important to try to race, potentially like get into a race with this Delver of Secrets. Delver doesn't flip, which is very good for us. They draw this Misty Rainforest. They only have 1 card in hand. Things are looking great. We draw City, so we don't have to take damage animating this Den of the Bugbear. Things are looking up. And then they cast Petty Theft, and suddenly everything is bad and we're dead. Because there's just no chance in hell we can race this Delver flipping and them casting Brazen Borrower on our end step. So we just have to hope this Delver doesn't flip. And the Delver flips and we die. We need to draw Shatter Skull or Fury to win now, and then we don't. They just flash in. Brazen Borrower. I animate hoping desperately that they'll cast Brainstorm or do something stupid and that we can win a race, but unlikely to happen at round 6 at 5-0. Yeah, we die. We have turn 1 or turn 0 Leyline, which is it's probably your best start against Delver with like 1 Brazen Borrower to answer it usually. And we also just have like a bunch of reasonable cards here. We get to cast turn 1 Fable, and then also have Dead Gone to clean up like an idiot afterwards. They do have Force Force of Negation, my Fable. Sad. But, again, we have Leyline here, so we're sitting pretty comfy. We also draw Chalice, which is great. Notably, cast the dead before you're going to Chalice them. As good as Gone is in this matchup, specifically trying to, like, answer Murktide Regents, when you have your Leyline in play, you're not really intending to Gone anything anytime soon, so burning the dead before I get this Chalice down, and then also playing this Mountain. It kind of sucks to have to play around Daze and potentially, like, lose out on the ability to cast the 3-drops. And they force again. But given that we have a Leyline in play, we have a lot more time to just sit here and, like, draw a couple of cards and then eventually start casting our spells again. So I'm fine with kind of ditching our city. And we get our Leyline Petty Thefted, which is a bummer, because they just instantly have the probably one of Brazen Borrower again. But now we have something to bitch this Chromox that we drew. Get to cast our Symbiont Spirit Guide here. Grey Ogre Beatdowns. Opponent missing land drops and not casting spells. Everything's looking surprisingly okay for us. They don't have threats. They don't have third land for this Brazen Borrower. Notably, I opted not to cast this Ancient Tomb, or not to play this Ancient Tomb last turn, specifically because of cards like Wasteland. Now that we have a reason to play out this Ancient Tomb, because we want to play this Rabble Master around Daze, I'll play it out even in the face of a Wasteland. If only we had an ever-present card we could pull out of the External Zone in moments like this. Yeah. I think about, like, trying to put a companion into prison decks a lot, but it sucks that Chalice prevents the Gigantha companion, because it'd be, like, pretty easy to play Gigantha otherwise. I guess you'd lose out on Fury and, like, sideboard ley lines. The Graveyard here would get a lot worse, because you couldn't play Macabre either, but I've thought about, like, Gigantha Red Prison a lot, but then it's just like, Chalice is the whole reason to play this deck. It's tough. Anyway, we begin our Symbiont Spirit Guide beatdowns. We're technically ahead in this race. My opponent has 1 card in hand, we have no cards in hand, but we are winning a race 3-1 versus 2-2 currently. And we draw the dead. We get to dead this Brazen Borrower. Dead on upkeep to play around Force of Negation. Pretty minor. They find DRC. We can still race that. They have second DRC. We can still race this. They should put more companions so we can have 100 prison. Yes, so we should get exactly 1 more companion, and it's like, I can't even think of our reasonable cost. None of the cards in your deck have mana value 1. You could get away with, like, not playing sideboard Pyros. Just, like, don't play any 1-drops. Deck must be monocolor. But then we don't get to play ley lines. Again, just always play around Daze. They Daze this to Surveil too. You look like a fool if you, like, hold on to this city for some reason. There are reasons to hold on to this city for sure. In some matchups that don't revolve around Daze, if you have, like, you could potentially draw, like, Den of the Bugbear, and there's, like, you wanted to play that before you play the city. So, like, if you're against, like, Jeskai in this board state, I would not play the City of Traders here. You just have the 3 mana to cast your spell. No reason to play your land that blows up, but just always against Delver. Just play around Daze when you can afford to, like that. We get to upgrade our Grey Ogre that put them down to 8 life. These DRCs flip, which is horrifying. We are no longer winning the race, but we draw Shatter Skull Smashing like a good Magic player. So we don't loot this away because it's very important to kill something for 3 mana. Also, attack first, respect Daze, yet again. Can't talk enough shit about Daze. But now we get to cast Shatter Skull for 3 and keep a treasure token around. Luckily, my opponent has somehow not found a single Murktide Regent in the top 23 cards of their deck. We draw Legion War Boss. Life's great. Maybe the Band-Aids people are onto something. Maybe. I will say, though, yeah, my opponent, I think, just promptly dies here. They're at 3. We have a million things to play. Yeah, they die game 2. I will say, though, one of my favorite things about that deck, specifically, about Red Prison specifically playing against Daze, is when you have a Simian Spirit Guide in hand, and you just get to, like, blow them the fuck out when they just, like, daze your Chalice, and then you just, like, pay for it with Spirit Guide. What are you going to do about it? Do you want to ban Daze? I think for the sake of the format health as a whole, I would like Daze banned, but I think for the sake of the player base, they should not and never will ban Daze. There are too many people in Paper that own Delver and will never play. If the ban Daze, they will just never play in Paper again. Delver's a deck that attracts a lot of players. People really like the deck and its play patterns. I think it will upset more people than the format health will be improved. I've gone back and forth on the whole ban Daze, not ban Daze thing a lot, but I think ultimately, I think it should be banned for format health reasons, but it won't be banned for player base health reasons. Anyway, hand is great. We have a bunch of reasonable stuff to play here. Potentially on turn 1 even. I opt to not play any of these cards turn 1, I think. Again, respecting Daze is one of the cards here, I guess, that I'm respecting, but we do have the Spirit Guide to potentially pitch to the Daze, but we could also just get to play around Daze for free by, like, not casting, not using this Chrome Mox, we just get to play our land here, and then play Ancient Tomb, cast our spell next turn. Primarily because they just went, like, land go. Again, for the, 9 millionth time. Casting Rattle Master into your opponent's open mana when they just, like, go land go. Not something you want to be doing. I do kind of regret playing the Shatter Skull Smashing out, though, specifically for reasons we'll kind of talk about as this game progresses. I think I probably should have led on, like, Ancient Tomb here. Especially against, like, a Wasteland deck. We play Mox before land. What are we pitching to the Mox? You want to, like, try to get them to daze the Mox? What do we pitch it for Resolve? Just, like, the Shatter Skull Smashing, and then just go, like, Ancient Tomb go? Might have been fine. Yeah, this is the reason, like, I think doing this was pretty bad. It was my only red source. My only permanent red source. We're probably going to have to end up pitching the Simian Spirit Guide to the Chrome Mox now. Definitely should just, like, with my 3 soul lands in hand, I definitely should have just gone Ancient Tomb go that turn. And we draw a 4th soul land. I look like a fool for playing out my Shatter Skull Smashing like that. But I'm definitely playing the control game here, and we're drawing, like, the worst cards possible. Not interested in casting my Goblin Rabble Master into Lightning Bolts. Prefer to just sit back and wait. Hopefully draw something relevant, which we haven't really. Now that they're tapped out, we can finally cast Goblin Rabble Master. It probably won't resolve, but we can cast it. It does resolve. Kind of surprising after all that, like, hemming and hawing. Yeah, playing the Smashing out is something that I thought of in the moment, and then realized, like, it wasn't my plan A. My plan A was, like, when I kept the hand, was like, oh, I'm just gonna, like, pitch the Chrome Mox, this Smashing to this Chrome Mox. We have, like, a bunch of stuff we can do. But I think when I realized, I was like, oh, I can just play the Smashing this turn instead, since I'm not casting any spells turn 1. I didn't really think about that line more, and I think playing out the Smashing specifically was really bad. The Smashing can be used for a lot of different things. And it just ends up getting wastelanded when we have nothing but mana in our hand. Moto, please. Okay. So they do have the lightning bolt, but at least we get something out of it. At least we didn't lead on City of Traders. Yeah, slightly better, I suppose. I opt to not, like, dead this Delver. There's a world where we can cast Simian Spirit Guide, Ancient Tomb, we can play the Mountain, and we can end up deading this Delver. But, like, this is the stage of the game where it's just like, okay, if my opponent casts Murktide Regent, I instantly die. We can beat a flipped Delver. We cannot beat a 6/6. Opponent does not have any, does not have any Murktide Regents, though. Exciting news for us. More exciting news is we draw Shatter Skull Smashing. Against my opponent having a bunch of 1/1s to play, which is really nice. So we get to shatter both these Delvers. Opponent uses a Daze to gain 2 life here. Or to deal me 2 damage, I mean. Notably, I opt to kill the Delvers, not the Dragon's Rage Channeler, even though the Dead Gaunt can kill a flip Delver and not Dragon's Rage Channeler. Specifically because we are winning this race, and I just want to kill them. This is maybe a mistake, given that they still have like 4 cards in hand. This game's gonna go a little bit longer. If they cast a Murktide this entire round, I don't think so. Just got like obscenely lucky and then still lost. I think it might have been better to wait. Hang on. Why? I think there was better reasoning than. No, they need to hit exactly creature if they cast Daze, then they need to flip exactly creature for this Dragon's Rage Channeler turn on. So like, there's no reason for me to like not target this. Yeah, I don't have any better reasoning other than I wasn't as concerned about a DRC than I was about a Delver of Secrets. I think I was just pretty locked into this Dead Gaunt having to beat a Murktide. Like this one. And then they Mystic Sanctuary back. Well, we can't kill all the things this turn anyway, right? Because we just don't have enough red to do that. But it's reasonable to just kill the 2 things and kill the Delver afterwards. And we draw Hearse, so I'm like, hey, there's a chance we can, like, Hearse down this Dragon's Rage Channeler and slow down, like, the Murktide coming back after we gone it. They only have 3 cards in hand. We're fine. Yeah, and then they force a will this gone, and then we die. GG. As many a Legacy games are ended, my opponent played an 8/8 and then force willed my removal spell, and then I died. But yeah, I think it's probably more correct. Doesn't end up mattering at all, but I think you're right in that I should have killed the DRC and a Delver and gone to the second Delver the next turn and hope to just like fade Murktide. There does reach a stage in the game where the Gaunt is not a good Murktide answer, and we were kind of reaching that stage. I don't think we had quite hit it yet. Like, as we saw there, my opponent played an 8/8 and had no other instants or sorceries for the Murktide. So it was, like, a little bit hard for them to, like, recoup. But we were definitely getting towards that point. So, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know why I kept this hand. Just truly, I went back and watched these replays, and I was just like, why the fuck did I keep this hand? This hand's not good. It's just, there's not anything exciting about it. Like, sure, we can, like, cast a turn 2 Magus or War Boss, I guess. But just, like, I don't know. I think this hand's, like, kind of bad. Maybe it's, like, just good enough to keep. My board wasn't cold to a 3/3. We were winning a race against a 3/3. Ignore that my opponent had, like, 4 cards in hand. I do think you're right. I think it was better to target the DRC afterwards. I thought there was some reasoning about like my opponent being able to like cast a daze and like getting the delirium online or something, but that just wasn't the case. Looking at it, they needed exactly creature. I don't know why I did it. Much like I don't really know why I was interested in this hand at all. Against Volcanic Pondergo, I wasn't sure what Nathan was on here. I assumed he was on like Delver or Delverless or something. So I wasn't interested in just casting like the shields are down, cast turn 1 War Boss into a daze. And I was sure as hell wasn't interested in casting Magus against almost any Volcanic Island deck. So I opted to just wait and ensure that I could cast multiple spells here. And now we can just like accelerate out a Magus with 1 Simian Spirit Guide and still have like a bunch of stuff left over. Never casting Legion Warboss and open mana, etc., etc. And then it turns out he's on Jeskai, which I was kind of surprised by. But getting the Warboss Cloud is like kind of okay for us. Happy to convert the bad Blood Moon, my hand with double Warboss in it. Opponent finds EI. We get to fire off our Warboss into tapped out, but probably gets Force of Willed or something, I presumed, but some manages to resolve, which is nice. We get to attack this Narset, which means if they want to activate it, they can't, like, Daze Undoing us. But starting to think that God Lackey was probably right in his assessment of, like, EI probably means no Daze Undoing. Just means, like, a much more reasonably built Jeskai list. There's the Force of Will. And now I think we're, like, a little bit behind here. This Expressive Iteration finds Swords to Plowshares. My opponent's, like, sitting pretty well. They have 6 cards in hand. One of them's a Force. We're still okay. We have, like, multiple threats here we can cast. I go against my own never cast your thing into open mana. But notably, my opponent had already cast 2 Swords to Plowshares this game, so I think like checking them on Swords to Plowshares number 3 is like pretty fine there. It ends up being really bad for me. Rather unfortunate, but I think there is an inflection point in terms of like never cast your Warboss or Rabblemaster into open mana, where like that heuristic becomes incorrect. Given that we had a reasonable card to cast there, though, like, I'm not positive that it was even correct there. We could have just, like, gotten by casting Fable and just, like, presuming that my opponent had 3 plows, but I don't know. Do you think current Jeskai is poorly built? I think they finally figured out how to build Jeskai well. Like, Jeskai was poorly built for a long time, but I think the current lists are better than they have been for the past, like, 3 months or whatever that the deck has existed. Mystic Sanctuary back, the EI, something you never want to see. To ferry your Goblin token. Everything's bad. My opponent still has this Force. No, they don't have the Force. I play out the Shatter Skull because we drew this Fury, so Fury plus Simian Spirit Guide, there's a decent chance I'm going to want to cast this. And then, lo and behold, opponent shows me a really clean Fury board. Has 3 cards in hand. They exile a Force of Will to this Expressive Iteration before passing the turn, which is probably just red flags everywhere. But also, it's not like we can ever not cast the Fury into this board. It just, if they found the 3rd Force of Will, the 2nd and 3rd Force of Will off of that EI, so be it. And then they did, and then we die. Just instant concession, not about to continue to play that game. What lists do you think are good? I don't know. Probably Nathan's. It's probably posted in the top 8 of this event. I don't really look at Jeskai lists a lot and think about it, but I would assume that whatever Nathan was on is probably a pretty good list. Red flags ever are unfortunate that I'm colorblind. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes your hand is just forced. Red flags are just normal flags if you're playing mono red. Yeah, exactly. Chat gets it. Anyway. This hand's great. Turn 1 Chalice, 3 balls, Gravel Masters, everything good going on here. Chalice resolves, everything coming up. Great for us. I deliberate a little bit on this following turn on whether it's correct to cast Trinisphere or Goblin Rabble Master. I'm honestly not sure. There's arguments for both. Discuss it after I draw my card here. Maybe the drawing the second Chalice leans me into wanting the Rabble Master more than the Trinisphere. There's arguments before for playing the Trinisphere here because there step 1, there's a decent chance my opponent just has Prismatic Ending, and that's why they let Chalice resolve, and if I want to get them to Force of Will something, I'd rather Force of Will the redundant 3-ball. Because we have the second one. Before we had the Chalice in hand, there's a chance, like, if we play Rabble Master, we attack them, it gives them an opportunity to just cast the Prismatic Ending on 2, but now we don't really care about that as much. But I think the Force of Will reasoning is why we should probably cast Trinisphere here. And then I just cast Goblin Rabble Master. Gotta give my beatdowns on. But I think Trinisphere is probably correct here. They don't force it. Everything's great. Nothing ever goes wrong for me. We have a Chalice in play. We have a Goblin Rabble Master that resolved. Opponent's got nothing. Opponent fetches. Guarantees that they have Prismatic Ending. They don't. They have Meltdown, which is basically the same thing. And then we draw, like, the best card possible, of course. The one thing we've really learned in this stream that I never ever get punished for my actions. Now we just get a Chalice. They force it, and then we get a 3-ball. And then we have a follow-up War Boss. If they have, like, Land Plow, they just take 1 billion damage. This deck feels like coin flipping. I mean, my turn was, like, my turn, hand, and board state were still all very fine if we didn't draw exactly Ancient Tomb there. Just happened to be the best possible draw. Top deck. Opponent casts a 3-mana Prismatic Ending, opts not to, figure they have the Plow and the Prismatic Ending, and if I don't have an additional threat, they'd rather, like, Plow this Rabble Master on tap and then ending the Trinisphere or something. So we attempt to go to combat first, Plow check, Plow confirmed, then we cast the War Boss. I think they almost always force there. I wonder if it's too unhinged to play the 3-ball before the Chalice. I think that is a little unhinged. I think resolving the Trinisphere is good enough. Assuming that like, the best case there is if they force a will the 3-ball and cast the Chalice, but I think for getting the Chalice forced and resolving the 3-ball is good enough, considering, like, the rest of my board state and cards in hand. We get to attack them down to 7, and we have a big Lava Spike in hand, which deals 6, which is pretty close to their current life total. Feels like they can't just keep a hand with Meltdown and Plow. Is their deck Cold to Moon? Like, they specifically didn't fetch around Moon, but, like, they could have, right? I guess it was hard for them to fetch around. They could have just fetched, like, Plains Volk and, like, not had that much of a difference. Or even, like, yeah, no, they needed to fetch the Volk for the Meltdown specifically. maybe I don't understand your statement. Their deck is Cold to Moon, so I don't think they're going to lose the game if you turn 1 jam. Anyway, we miss on second red source, but we have big lava spike and Trinosphere. We found red source. Now if they ever tap out any amount of mana, they instantly die. They cast Ambush Viper, and then we play Shatter Skull Smashing, Confluence their face for 6. Magic Sling is weird. Their deck is Cold to Moon. Yeah, Magic Sling is very bizarre. This is another one of those hands. I don't really know what was going on. What was kicking around in my brain. I guess this hand is okay. Like, it is a potential turn 1 War Boss or like turn 1 Hearse if they just go like land go. But I don't know. This hand is like kind of weak. It's got like 2 not very like kind of do nothing cards in it, Fury and Confluence. Obviously, we pitch one of them to the Chrome Mox, but the other is like not really gonna end up doing a lot ever. Maybe this hand just has to be keepable. Keep it and draw a soul land. That would be good. We draw second Confluence, which is like a soul land, except not. And then also, this is something I realized as soon as I passed the turn. My brain was just not firing on all cylinders that day. They went land go, so I was like, all right, we're just not gonna cast our War Boss. And then I also just don't go like Chrome Mox Hearse, which is kind of insane considering that like this hand is going to play this Chrome Mox like guaranteed. So I kind of just should have cast the 2-drop regardless. And we draw Chalice, so I was like, yeah, well, end up playing the Chalice here. Hey, Chilius, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. And then we accidentally get paid off for not casting the Hearse turn 1 because my opponent has the Meltdown again. Rather unfortunate. And now we need to draw like a Soul Land to be in this. And then we instantly draw a Soul Land. And we are in it. Unfortunately, my opponent does have the Plow. Again, going against my heuristic of, like, never cast your War Boss into open mana, but, like, I wasn't particularly interested in casting the Spirit Guide. They're at 18, and also we need red mana to cast our Fiery Confluences. There's a chance I could have just cast Hearse here, maybe. Now we have to pitch our Spirit Guide in order to cast this Confluence, and then they get Force of Willed. But luckily we have second Confluence to, you know, stay alive here somehow. We can play the Shatter Skull Smashing, and then Fiery Confluence their board. They only have 1 Garden Hand after this, so, like, we are still in this game somehow. Draw red Elemental Blast, things are looking okay. We are, like, moderately in this game still. Expressive Iteration is a real good way to no longer be in this game, unfortunately. Suddenly they have, like, 3 cards in hand. Teferi luckily ticks up again, so I end up just red blasting it, because if I play either of my 2 cards here, they just get to cantrip with it. So I think I just need to convert the red blast while I still can. Fortunately, my opponent just has another Expressive Iteration. And then another Teferi. Everything's really bad. And then, if I recall correctly, my opponent has another Expressive Iteration. Oh no, this is what happens. I fucked up my. This was just like a really bad play. I exiled like what, brainstorm. Let me rewind. Plow or something. Yeah, opting to plan for future turns when I like very explicitly should have just exiled both the iterations here. If they have a Snapcaster Mage, they could just like snap brainstorm in response to this Hearse anyway. The Plow is like pretty far down the line. I can exile that later with the Hearse. I should have just killed both iterations while we were here. And then they instantly snap iteration me. Yeah, that was a pretty severe punt. There's like absolutely no reason to exile the brainstorm and the Plow there. Still looking okay. This is one of the points where Den is, a little awkward. Can't cast both of our 2-drops here. A little unfortunate. But also, this Den is pretty important to, like, somehow have a chance in this game where my opponent has 5 cards in hand, We do need our mana, like, our lands to be threats in some capacity. What's up, Dukes? How's it going? Is Delver gonna see a ban? The card Delver of Secrets or the deck Delver? Opponent hardcasts Force or something? Yeah. We're fairly out of this game. Notably, we do have exactly enough mana to cast Chandra Awakened Inferno. So one of the main reasons I kept playing this game out is because we have like exactly 1 out. But like my opponent has 6 cards in hand, 2 Planeswalkers. They can like Teferi their Snapcaster Mage, draw a card, have a million things going on. They force a Will My Fury. Everything's bad. But for like 3 or 4 turns here, we're live to like, draw Chandra Awakened Inferno and still have a chance in this game because the opponent's not really great at beating an uncounterable thing that with a quick clock. Where's the cat? Our electronic feeder just went off, so she's probably getting food. The deck Delver, yeah, I think it can and should get a card or 2 banned. But probably won't. For a while, at least. It has a 50% win rate. It's fine now, guys. Don't worry. It's actually unfavored against a lot of the other top decks of the format right now. People fail to consider that Delver fucking sucks, and they should ban Murktide Regent and Expressive Iteration. But yeah, this game's pretty much over. This is somewhere where I kind of fuck up here. I know they have a Plow in their hand from like 100 turns ago from this Narset. Like, I do need to try to stay alive here somehow, but I should have just cast the Rabble Master last turn and let it get plowed, because by animating this Den, I turn off top decking Chandra Awakened Inferno, which was, my only out that I was playing towards for several turns here. So like if I top decked Chandra exactly this turn, I think I could stay alive if I had played Rabble Master. We instead draw more big lava spikes, which is not good when your opponent's at 14. So many Delver Zoomers playing Legacy right now. Yeah, I mean, the Zoomers play like the best deck a lot. Zoomers have no qualms over, like, I've played this deck for 6 years. I'm not going to change decks. They just play the good deck. And the good deck's Delver, and the good deck has always been Delver. Anyway, yeah, this game is incredibly over. Opponent flashes into Ambush Vipers, and that beats me because I'm 1 life. When we cleanly go from 5-0 into 5-2, kind of getting brutalized there. But we make it a top 8 anyway. Top 8 anyway, because, 5-0 makes your breakers really good. And then we get our grudge match against our blue-red Delver opponent in the quarterfinals here. Wow, that first hand went away very fast. Hand's awful. Not a lot to say about it. Hand is better. We're on the play. We get to cast our own Trinisphere. Wonder if it's possible... No, wait, no. never mind. I was about to say, I wonder if it's possible I should have, because, like, the first Trinity Sphere is pretty live to get forced, that I want the second Trinity Sphere instead of the Blood Moon, but I need a card to pitch to this Chrome Mox. So, never mind. Bad idea. We would much rather just cast Trinity Sphere into our threat. And then they don't have Force of Will. And the game is almost instantly over. Turn 1 Trinity Sphere on the play, turn 2 Rabblemaster, got Fable, they're dead. Life's great. Sometimes you just get to punch Delver right in the teeth. They don't always have Force of Will into threat into days, like they did last time we lost the game 1. Yeah, opponent has decided that they no longer wanted to play this game. And then game 2, we get another Leyline opener. This hand is extremely reactive, but big fan of basically anything. Is it bringing the Rabble versus the Bull deck ever reasonable? I don't think so, given how much I don't like Blood Moon in the matchup. And the fact that we needed a clock. Turn 1 Trinity Sphere isn't good if we can't also kill them to follow it up. Like, if we go turn 1 Trinity Sphere, turn 2 Blood Moon, and then they just go land. Like, especially if they go specifically fetch land on turn 1, and then, like, in response to Moon, fetch basic island, and they just go lands while we have no pressure. I don't think it's super reasonable. 3-ball into Moon if they have so presuming that they have Force, Moon is the better follow-up. Did you say easy in chat when you had the Leyline? No, because we... Oh, no, we did win the game where we had Leyline last time. But they had, like, turn 2 Brazen Borrower for it last time. I don't think the Moon is a good enough follow-up to the 3-ball if they do have the Force. I just don't think the Moon is very good. It keeps them off of exactly Murktide, but assuming that they just have any fetch, the Moon doesn't do a lot in that case. So this was, like, kind of an insane play. But, like, my hand isn't doing anything else. Oh, let's rewind here. So, like, my draw for turn was Legion Warboss. So, like, I was content to just, like, land go and sit here with, like, a removal spell, but my hand was, like, being double Chrome Mox as it is, we kind of need to develop something. So, maybe this play isn't crazy. We end up, like, dumping our entire hand to cast this Warboss. But notably, we could play it around a daze and before my opponent gets to hold up Bolt. But we do have to pitch our Dead Gun in the process, which is kind of unfortunate. But given that we have a Leyline in play, like, their threats are less threatening. And if they do daze this, we obviously get to convert Spirit Guide, which is great. If they force it, we get to play our Grizzly Bear or whatever. Grey Ogre, which is fine. I think this play's, like, a little bit insane. But, like, I don't know if, like, sitting here and waiting was getting better. Maybe I should have just gone, like, Mountain Go. And, like, waited. If we found more lands, we could potentially not have to pitch our Dead Gone. Putting against Matthias Hardstyle, apparently. Yeah, that guy is extremely toxic. I've hit him a couple times. Definitely a toxic player. Guess it kind of plays in a Meltdown a bit. Yeah. It's the only reason to not do it. I think it's, like, kind of insane thinking about it more now. The fact that we have to pitch, like, a real card to the second Chrome Mox means I think I can afford to just, like, wait a turn. The hand always plays in Meltdown? I mean, I guess, but, like, presuming we draw a land, we're never going to play the second Chrome Mox, right? I think we're just we can... If we don't cast the Warboss that turn, then we're on the path of we're never going to play the second Chrome Mox. It's just going to, like, kind of rot in our hand forever. Opponent's Delver doesn't flip. Opponent is not great at flipping their Delvers. It's very good for me. We have Hardcast Fury, which I opt not to go for a number of reasons here. Would rather not cast it into days. Would rather wait until they have more things that are threatening in play, like they could potentially play a second thing to clean up. Imagine being solo against draw lands. Yeah, imagine. Notably here, though, I'm not sure that, like, not playing around Days is reasonable, given that I also don't play the Ancient Tomb to play around Wasteland, because I don't really get to play around both of those cards here. Like, obviously, if I want to cast this Fury around a Days, I need to play the Ancient Tomb and, like, draw another mana source. I think holding the Fury and just kind of waiting, and because we're not that threatened at 20 life versus single Delver, we could potentially see them play a second threat to kill, or we could have more information based on the cards that we draw. I think that's fine, but I don't think we get to play around both Days and Wasteland here, so I opted to play around Wasteland and not Days. Could always, like, draw a red card and pitch cast it if we want to play around Days. But now we just draw second Fury, so I'm okay just casting into a Days. And they don't have it. They did flip their Delver Bolt, so our thing's going to die, but we have a Grizzly Bear, and we get to kill their Delver. They Meltdown us, which is sad. They Wasteland us, which I don't even think showed up. It happened so fast, but it's also sad. But we have a Grizzly Bear. They're at 13. We draw a red source, or a red card for our second Fury. They bolt our Grey Ogre. We get into this holding pattern, which I think red person's pretty favored here with a Leyline in play. And, you know, 3 removal spells in hand. Content to continue to sit here. They play DRC. Not particularly interested in firing off this Dead Gone. There's, like, no reason to cast it into Days. We could draw a land. If we miss on land, I might fire off the Dead Gone in their upkeep or something. But we hit on land, but then they do have the Force, which is why you cast this in upkeep and not during their turn, because they had 3 mana up. They did have 3 mana up, right? I'm not insane. Yeah. They have Force Negation up. So I'd rather cast on their upkeep, make them waste their mana on their own turn. Play second Dragon's Rage Channeler. We draw another land. Things looking pretty good for this Fury here. I decided to Fury pitch Fury here, which I'm not positive is correct. I think, like, I wanted to be able to clean something up. It's possible that, like, I should have played around Force Blue card being their last card, maybe. But I really wanted to be able to actually close out this game at some point. So I keep the Rabble Master, because, you know, it's castable. They also, which is just insanely good for me, they daze this to get double Surveils here. So it's just like I don't cast this Rabble Master into the daze. Then they mill over a Chain Lightning. And they mill over another Dragon's Rage Channeler, which, you know, makes sense, but, like, mills over more of their threats that they can actually cast. They're probably digging for, like, a Brazen Borrower or something, or at least a Delver of Secrets, something that's better into their Leyline. Kind of like just casting the Rabble there, really? Interesting. Into a Daze, even? Which would have been awful, yeah. I don't know if I would have been interested in casting Rabble there. Now we're drawing our lands. Everything's fine. We have a Den, so any mana source is good. They have a Lightning Bolt. Mana source is good. We can fire up the Den. Spells are good because we get to, you know, cast them. Kill this Delver because it's the scariest blue card they could play here. I think you should just play Control Exile your Clock. Yeah, I think that might have been more correct. Looking back on it. I'm not 100% sure, but given the state of the game, I think it's correct. So we're top decking here, and my opponent instantly draws Bolt the turn I can animate Den, which is unfortunate. Pretty sad, but I think we're still massively favored here. And then also the mana that we drew to animate our Den was a City of Traders, which means it doesn't work for our second Den. But At this stage of the game, almost every card in our deck is good. They've been really staying afloat desperately in this game. Like, if you look at their exile zone, they've been desperately staying alive. They melt down to Surveil, but like, almost all of this game means that like, almost all this game is played out in such a way that like all of our top decks are just really good, and they've just been like barely keeping pace by drawing insane. I have to discard this because any other land is better, and any spell is better than Animating Den. Simian Spirit got actually one of the biggest punishes. But I'm happy to just cast more Grizzly Bears against this board state. Opponent's Delver doesn't flip again. Everything's great. They cast another Delver. I think we draw like Fury here or something stupid. Yeah, Shatter Skull Smashing. Now I get to blow up the Delvers and it's actually correct. And they're just insanely dead. The treasure also animates in. Yeah, the treasure animates in the following turn, yeah. So just like a lot of reasons to loot away that ancient tomb, even though it's like, oh, we hit our land, we can animate this thing to start killing them. It's just like most of the other cards in our deck are better than ancient tomb still. Hold up here. 7, not particularly interesting. Technically, I have turn 1 Chalice, but not a lot else. Not happy to turn 1 Chalice into hit no land drops and not cast any more of my spells. So we mulligan into a pretty mediocre hand, but it's like fine. Turn 1 War Boss on the play. Can definitely steal some games here. I actually don't know if I knew what my semifinals opponent was on. I don't think I did. And then they go Great Furnace, Goblin Welder. Oh no. The Painter matchup. Which I don't think is like terrible for Red Prison, but it's definitely a deck that just always kicks the shit out of me because I don't play against it enough to like, oh god, what the fuck? Just like skipped over 2 turns there. Jesus. Wow, yeah. Moto did not handle that set of turns very well. But they played Goblin Welder on turn 1. I untapped, drew a Blood Moon, cast Hearse to stop the Welder, and then they... oh yeah, they pedal out a Grindstone as well. Catch you up on what happened in that weird blip. And then they have Painter's Servant, everything's bad. We need to draw exactly Fury, and then I also do the stupid thing where I try to exile this this Hearse, or try to exile this pedal with the Hearse, and then they can just tap the Furnace, weld it out, and then Grindstone me, and then I don't even give myself the draw step to draw Fury. Because I'm dumb and bad. I know. I'm sorry. I misplayed in the semifinals. My bad. Yes, she's very upset that I misplayed in the semifinals. This hand has a lot of the good cards going for it. Fire Confluence is obviously insane. Fury is obviously insane. It's a little bit awkward on the mana. It might have even been correct to pitch one of the War Bosses instead. But given that I don't really have... I'm going down to 2 mana here. I'm not guaranteed to cast any more of my spells. I have to pitch the Confluence and hold on to the War Boss, so if I draw a mana, I'm good to cast this, and if I don't draw the mana, then I can still pitch cast Fury with my red card. I'm not sure if it was correct, because Fire Confluence is one of your better cards if you can get to it, but given the state of this hand, it's a little bit dicey for me to ever be able to like reach the point to cast Fiery Confluence. Opponent then Furies me, which is just horrendous. Everything's bad. They have Grindstone. Everything's horrifying. We instantly draw a Soul Land, which is like the biggest punish for me pitching the Fiery Confluence. Just like I was saying, oh, we might not even get to 4 mana ever. If we draw a land, we can cast the War Boss, but we draw like the actual perfect thing to cast our 4 mana spells, but we pitched our 4 mana spell. If obviously if we know Ancient Tunes at the top of my deck, I would have much rather pitched the Fury or the Chrome Mox rather than the Fiery Confluence, but such is life. We have second War Boss, try to get something going. Hopefully we draw a land or red card into the Painter Servant that they're, of course, going to play on turn 2. And they don't have Painter Servant, they just have turn 2 Karn. And then they go get a Painter Servant with it. And this is where I end up misplaying for the... Actually, no, this wasn't a misplay. Looking back on it, never mind. Definitely thought that this was a misplay, but I actually can't activate the Chrome Mox here. Never mind. I thought about it, and I was like, I should have just played this Shadow Skull Smashing to hardcast the Fury next turn, because I don't need to pitch cast it, because I just have the 5 mana. And if I just play the Shadow Skull Smashing, I should just play Untapped and animate the Den, but I can't actually animate the Den. But we clear the Karn, and I have to just not play the Shadow Skull Smashing at all afterwards, because there's a chance I can always just play it untapped. My life total isn't a huge deal. My life total isn't a huge deal, and there's a chance that I want to, like, if they cast, like, a Goblin Welder or a Goblin Engineer or something, I'd rather just cast the Smashing and hold the Fury longer. And they have Saga into the Painter Servant. Into Grindstone. So, God, I wish I had a Fiery Confluence in my hand, huh? Then we draw Chalice, which is a pretty huge game changer. And this is a play that they have 1 card in hand I feel pretty smart about, but then instantly felt stupid. Chalice here is a banger, because if their last card is Pyroblast, then I fucking lose this game. So why wouldn't I just cast my Chalice here? And then they Pyroblast my War Boss. Is like, fuck! I needed to go to combat first. God damn it. Extremely dumb. Lost out on an extra 2/2, which could, like, could easily end up mattering in this game, where my opponent has 0 cards in hand, but has a Saga that makes 3/3s. And just, like, we get to attack them down to, what, 9 here? Whereas if I attacked with everything first, generated my extra 2/2 Goblin, and then Chalice into Furied, things look a lot better this game. I guess this play is better if they don't have the... Yeah, this play is better if they don't have the Pyroblast, right? Because we get to do it, like, pre-combat and get an extra damage. But yeah, I definitely had to read that the last card was Pyroblast, which is why I ended up playing the Chalice. I think it's really tempting to just, like, hardcast your Fury there. Just be like, well, we need a big thing to threaten, to pressure, like, Saga. And we can just, like, kill the Painter Servant in the process there. But I was sniffing out Pyroblast with the Chalice draw. And they have second Saga. Things are looking horrible. We draw Fable, which is like, you know, this is okay. Maybe we're alive here. We can, like, scrape together something against 9 life. Against, like, an onslaught of Saga tokens. And then my opponent opts to make mana with this with this Urza Saga, which is very not good for me, because there's only one... I guess there's maybe 2 cards they could have top decked where they would have wanted to do this. And one of them is Painter Servant, and then we just instantly die. Unfortunate. My misplay probably doesn't end up mattering here. My opponent just had a bunch of shit in play. And we probably would not have been able to close out this game in time. thus ends my reign of terror with Red Prison against Painter. Pretty unfortunate series of draws for my opponent. Or I guess fortunate for them, unfortunate for me, but them's the breaks. I drew very hot in a lot of my games in the Swiss to get to this point, and sometimes your opponent draws better. But also, you know, could have played tighter. A lot of my decisions, even down to, like, my Chrome Box decision on turn 1 definitely impacted some things. Maybe I should have pitched the second War Boss if I had, like, Fury and Confluence my hand, but then also, you know, we wouldn't have had any pressure in play, so God knows. A lot of different lines, and I think it's always interesting to, like, note these games specifically, these ones where your decision points do end up mattering, because a lot of people are just like, Herb Derp, Red Prison, you cast your Chalice, you cast your 3-ball, and they die, which is, you know, a fair number of the games, as we saw. Sometimes you do cast your Trinisphere and your Blood Moon, and then they die, but there are a lot of interesting decision points, and I do like this deck a lot. It makes for some more interesting games than some people would like to believe. But yeah, that's it. That is the end of my my top 4 with Red Prison, Cars 2, Tokyo Drift, Moon Stompy, whatever you want to call it, Fury Road. Yeah, that's all I got. Find someone to host here, though. God, I haven't hosted anyone forever. Or, like, rated? Whatever. Still don't know the difference between those two. I'm pretty sure I can type exclamation point host or exclamation point rated, and it does the same thing. Ooh, Jarvis is streaming.
Oh, love Hardened Scales.
What is Jarvis streaming?
I like Hardened Scales when you could play with Moscow.
Oh, never mind. I can't host Jarvis. Does he have someone in chat?
Alright, submit. Alright, game 3. Match 4, yeah.
Doesn't look like he does. I think he's just playing. Just decided to play test today. TY for overview of I Smashed with Mono Red. Yeah. I think it is a deck that I always wanted to talk about a little bit. I'm glad I got to, like, speak my little piece on the deck, preach about how good Fable and Unlicensed Hearse are, because I think these cards are really important. I think, like, some people that are still playing Red Prison doubt the power of Fable the Mirror Breaker specifically. This card is so fucking good. This card is incredible. This is, like, I would absolutely cut War Bosses before I cut Fables out of this deck for, like, other cards if I wanted to play, like, you know, Bone Crushers or whatever. I'd probably even cut Rabbles before Fables. I think Fable is just, like, a very important, like, piece of the puzzle for this deck in terms of bringing together a lot of the stuff that this deck is trying to do. And just, some people didn't get that. I like to try to emphasize it here. Alright. Jarvis just playing test for fun. Maybe I'll host him. I was briefly concerned that he may have had some less than savory folks, less than savory test players on the stream. But if it's just Jarvis playing test, I'll go host Jarvis. Jarvis is a great guy. Send Jarvis my regards. I think I've always typed exclamation point host, but I think rating is, like, supposedly always better. But I don't know the difference. So I'm just going to type exclamation point raid and see what happens. Thus concludes the XJ stream for the quarter. Yeah, I'll see you guys all in 3 months. Goodbye forever. Realistically, though, I will be back on Monday with Luanil for a D&T stream. I guess I should plug that one before I go. D&T stream on Monday, Memorial Day. We're going to be a state of the deck address where we're going to talk a lot about the different variations of the deck and where we think D&T is in the meta, stuff like that. So come back then. I'll tweet about the specifics on that tomorrow. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one. That did not work. I'm just going to host him. That didn't work either. I don't understand. Chat, help. My commands aren't working. Why don't my ex... Slash? Is it? Has it always been slash? It has. Chat actually helped, huh? Goodbye, this time for real.